Hey there, and welcome back. In the last video, we unpacked the acute stress response, this short-term fight-flight kind of response that says, let's recognize what's going on, let's respond appropriately, and then let's have a time to recover. This video here is about the chronic stress response. Again, what I want to bring to you is an understanding of what's happening maybe for you, for those around you, for our society as we live past the point of threshold, just like we talked about in that previous video. As you start to gain more understanding about stress, it's my desire that you'll stop and reflect, you'll stop and see where are the places where I'm not recovering, where is the stress leaks in my world, if you want to call it that. Rather than just plugging more information in as we go through these videos, please take time to contemplate. Please take time to stop and look around and fit yourself into the story, but also fit change into the story. You hear me talk over and over again about change is possible. Change is not going to come just from watching these videos. Of course, this course is designed to help you to know what to do to be able to move forward and overcome stress. But change won't come from these videos. Change will come from you giving yourself the gift of being still, listening, thinking, and then being willing to move forwards. Let's dive in and talk about chronic stress. Over here, just to set the context again from what we talked about last time, there's three key things that I want to remind you of from the last video. The first is this sympathetic response and this parasympathetic recovery. And one of the reasons that we go into chronic stress, one of the reasons that chronic stress becomes a thing is that the recovery is too low. We're not giving ourselves enough time to recover. The second reason is this the bucket metaphor we had here, where we go past the point of threshold, we load up too many different stresses. And again, whether they're little and constant or whether they're big and intermittent or big and constant, if we go too high, if the load is too much, we're going to move past the point of threshold and into chronic stress. And the third is that point of threshold. The third is this Yerkes-Dodson scale. The third is saying we've gone up where we used stress to improve our performance. We used stress to be able to go forwards, but now we're living beyond our means. We're living beyond the threshold. We're living on that right side of the scale. And we're in dysregulation between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system is dysregulated. We're now failing to adapt. So with that as the context, let's see where heart rate variability fits into this. So on the Elite HRV app, these are measurements of your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, basically your autonomic nervous system. And we're going to start with these two pictures on the left side, here. And this is what we would call low heart rate variability. Okay, a couple of key numbers that I want to point out to you. This is all available through the app. The first is this one here, 47. 47 is the heart rate variability score for this individual. It's not a terrible score, but what we can see as we zoom in a little bit, it's in the sympathetic end of the scale for this person. It's below where they would normally be. Their baseline is going to be somewhere up in the mid to low 50s. And so in this particular reading, their readiness was 6, their heart rate variability was 47, and they're at the sympathetic end of the scale. You see, all the language we've been using through this whole course is baked into the Elite HRV app. This person in this reading had a heart rate of 69. And importantly, as we come over here and we dig in a little bit deeper, this number here I feel is also very important. It's one of the ones I love to look at with myself and with clients. It's called the RMSSD. This, I think, is an absolute measure of heart rate variability. These ones, of course, here are a very quick snapshot, but this is one that I love to pull out. There's lots of different numbers that come in when we look at the data. All of them are relevant in different ways, but RMSSD is something that I want to see as high as possible for people. Let me show you what a good or a high reading would be. We come across to these other two pictures here. And here, this person is right on their baseline. You can see it's right in the middle, but the heart rate variability is 74 and heart rate 47. Compared back to this previous person, where heart rate variability was 47, heart rate 69, you can see a completely different result here. whilst this person is balanced in terms of their sympathetic and parasympathetic, they're at their baseline. This means that they're at where they would usually be, which is fantastic. It's a much higher, much better result, indicating, is the word I wanted, indicating this person is in a much more adaptable state. They're in a much better state to be able to regulate their sympathetic, parasympathetic control. It means they can go up when they need to, and they can come down when they need to. They can go into response mode when they need to. They can come into recovery mode when they need to. And again, the other number I love to pull out is this RMSSD down the bottom here. You can see this person, 119.55. It's a great result. Now, this person is doing very well. The previous person, fairly average, maybe a little below average. But this is how to use some of this data. This is how to contextualize some of the data to the sorts of things that we're talking about right now. I want to pull out these graphs here, and this is all also in the heart rate variability, the Elite HRV app. And what this shows is different population comparisons. And so these are not necessarily relative to the ones above. I just want to make that really clear. But what we can see is, in fact, my mistake, these three graphs are all related to this reading from this one up the top here. And what we can see is the population comparison for the heart rate variability score, the SDNN, another one of the metrics that's in there, and the RMSSD, the one I've been talking about. And what we can see is we can put in male, female, so gender and age, and we can choose the metric we want to see. And what we get to look at here is how does this person, and in this case you, how do you rate against the rest of the population of your gender and your age group? And so we can start to get a grid, start to get a picture as to say how well is this particular person doing with these readings. Remember, they're related to the top right ones. The heart rate variability score was 74, heart rate was 47 from memory. And you can see this classic bell curve that we have here with each of these, and the yellow indicates where this person was at. And you can see they're above the median there. And again, they're all in the right sort of directions. And so what I'd love you to do with your Elite HRV app is start to see where do you rate compared to your cohort or your peer. And here we can start to see how are you doing compared to where you would be expected possibly to be. Of course, rating a 20-year-old male against an 80-year-old female or an 80-year-old male, indeed, is going to be a completely different set of statistics, which is why baked in is these population comparisons. It's a really useful tool to be able to know where am I in this point of chronic stress. These readings here for this person show that they're probably not living in the chronic stress realm, okay? If I change my pen to yellow for a second, and let's imagine the yellow line was somewhere down here or here or here, we would see this person is probably in a chronic stress state. Okay, so to give context as to this whole picture, this is where we start to use the data to say, okay, where am I and how am I going? Let's dive a little deeper. And I want to ask the question, I want to put it up on the screen there. Why are so many people becoming chronically stressed? How are we getting into this place? Let me just update this for a second. All right. Let's come back to this concept, which I think will be landing for you now as we start to look at the trajectory of where acute stress becomes chronic and look at the implications of that. I want you to remember that survival is always the priority. The body is always saying, you know what, regardless of everything else, the first and most important thing is for me to survive this. Okay, everything else can wait. I must survive. Of course, if I don't survive, nothing else really matters, does it? So let's unpack a little bit more and go into these different triggers that we can have. Do you remember the picture we had? I showed it to you just a few minutes ago, where we've got the bucket and the different stresses. We got physical, mental, emotional, social, etc. All these different stresses that are going in. Well, here I want to point out to you what starts to happen in terms of a cyclical event or a cyclical pattern that goes on, which is putting us as a population into these places of chronic stress. And here it is. We have these different triggers. Whatever color they are, whatever the stressor is, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so the stressors go in, and what happens is we overflow the bucket. The bucket starts to go beyond the point of threshold. We're past that yellow box on the Yerkes-Dodson scale. And now we're in this place where we're beyond threshold. And what happens is our vigilance and our alertness goes up. Remember, these are two of the hallmarks of the acute stress response. It's basically saying, you know what? I've gone beyond what I can tolerate, and now I'm living in this place of high alertness and high vigilance. My system is wired to look for threat. Take your mind back to where I talked about the top-down versus the bottom-up approach neurologically to our regulation and responses. This hypervigilance is this bottom-up approach we're talking about. The brain is now wired, the amygdala is now wired to look for what's going on. Let's dive in a little bit more and say, once we get this hypervigilance, once we get this alertness, the senses are primed. The eyes are wider, okay? You can imagine walking down a dark alley or looking for another predator or something like that. Your eyes are wide. Your ears are peaked. You are looking for everything. You are sensing everything. Why? Because your survival matters. It's dependent on what you hear, what you hear, what you see, what you smell, what you feel, less about what you taste. I'm sure somebody out there's got some research about taste being important in part of this. But the senses are primed. Next thing that happens, and this is all in this process, is the amygdala becomes sensitized. The amygdala is now, it literally starts to grow. It's what we call hypertrophy. It gets bigger. Scans show from a neuroplasticity point of view, the amygdala literally starts to get bigger. Why? It's taking in more information and it's processing more information because the senses are primed, because we're in this high alert state, because we're living beyond our threshold. What starts to happen in this moment where the amygdala bigger is that the threshold actually gets smaller. It's easier to trip the system. It's easier to flick the switch. Why? Because we're ready for it. We're primed for it. And here we've got this pattern, this pathway of hypervigilance, alert, wired, and worried. You know people like that. I know people like that. Have you been that person? I have at times. You know, where I've had seasons of life before I knew a lot of this stuff where I was worried, I was alert, I was wired. I couldn't rest. I had to keep going. I had to keep pushing. Remember back, these are some of the things that are the hallmarks of the journey that so many of us walk. You know, the person who's hypersensitive hearing, or they can't stand bright lights, they're always wearing glasses, or they're always irritated. We see a lot of kids. I work in practice as a chiropractor as well. I see a lot of kids with this sensory processing thing. I see a lot of adults with this sensory processing challenge. Here's the reason why. This is one of the key reasons why that happens, is because the system is hypervigilant and worried. Wired and worried. Unless this changes, unless we can break this cycle, then what's going to happen is the threshold gets lower and it's easier to trigger, and we just keep firing that. Now we're starting to live on the wrong side of that Yerkes-Dodson scale. I'm going to come to that in a few moments. Let's have a look at this next place. And let's look at these triggers. I want you to recognize that the triggers that you face, the triggers that we face, can be either actual or perceived. Here I am. I'm walking through... let me go into Impala. I'm an Impala. I'm walking through the savannah or wherever I am. Okay. If a lioness jumps out at me or a lion jumps out at me, boom, that's an actual trigger. Recognize, respond, and come to a place of recovery. But at the moment, recognize the trigger, respond appropriately. But when we get in this wired and worried state, when we're in this place where the threshold is lower and we're constantly tripping the switch, we're hyper-vigilant, we're hyper-alert, then what happens is the amygdala starts to perceive stresses even that don't exist. Interesting. It's like, it gets overwhelmed. And so here's what happens is the actual or the perceived trigger stimulate the same response. The response of this high blood pressure, high heart rate, high muscle tension, high alertness, low concentration, low reproduction, low digestion, all the things that were in the previous acute stress response picture of the lion, they all happen whether it's real or we imagine it to be there. And so here's the challenge. We get stuck in this place. We start to see everything as a threat, everything as a challenge to us. And now we get stuck in the loop of overwhelm. We get stuck in the loop of worry. We get stuck in this place of uncertainty. We get stuck in this place of instability. We get stuck in these places of just not knowing how to move forwards. This is what's happening. And what happens is when these loops are happening, when we're beyond threshold and it's triggering easily, wired and worried, is there's little time to recover. As a culture, remember I was saying earlier, rest and recovery are not something that's esteemed. What is esteemed is busy, push, achieve, perform, produce, prove yourself. These are the things that are esteemed. Rest is not esteemed. And so we don't try and fit it in. We don't make space and carve space to put rest in. And we wonder if it's ever going to happen, but we're wired, we're worried, we're looking, we're alert, we're vigilant. And so we don't have opportunity to recover. What do? There must be a choice. There must be a choice. I'm going to say it a third time. There must be a choice, and there's the opportunity to choose how are we going to lower the load and increase the recovery. For if we don't, we dive down this chronic stress path. I'm going to unpack in just the next slide or two what happens when we're living beyond threshold, when we're living in these places. But unless we choose to minimize the load and maximize the recovery, then we get stuck in chronic stress. The great news, I say it over and over again because I want it to land for you. It's not too late. You're not too old. It's not too hard. Change is possible. Change is possible to say, I'm here. I didn't even realize it. I couldn't even see it until now, but now I can see it. What do? Do I throw in the towel and say it's all too much, too hard, too difficult? No, change is absolutely possible. Let's have a look. Let's have a look what happens for our friend here in chronic stress. Kind of looks like me, doesn't it? Can I do that? Just playing. It's been me. I can talk with authority about this because it's been me. Maybe not to the depth of some of the things I'm going to talk about, but what happens is where we get this chronic stress place, the long-term effect, the trajectory of long-term stress, the implications of chronic stress is chronic illness. Take your mind back to the slide that had heart rate and blood pressure and muscle tension, cardiovascular function, organ function, all the things that change in the acute stress response. Well, when they stay turned on, we end up with chronic illness. Let's just have a look. Think about what happens to the cardiovascular system. If the cardiovascular system if the brain's always running from this bottom-up approach, the brain's saying, you know what, we're worried, we're wired, we could be under threat here. The heart rate stays up, the blood pressure stays up, the blood clotting stays up. What happens to the cardiovascular system? What happens to the immune system when it's chronically pulled down, when it's pulled down to say, you know what, we can't afford you right now. We have to get away from this. We get chronic immune depression, immune suppression. Start to let your mind wander, say, what would happen if I lived with chronic cardiovascular stress and chronic immune suppression? Let your mind go there. What would happen if your digestive system was chronically turned down? We start to look at things like Crohn's, IBS, different digestive things, GORD. We've got all these names for things that just says the system is not working. And a lot of that is tied directly into these things. Chronic stress drives chronic illness. The musculoskeletal system gets challenged. Why? Here's what happens. Get this for a second. I'm also a chiropractor. So the musculoskeletal system, something I've worked a lot with. But here we have this system that's wired. There's tension. Everything's loaded. Let me come back for a second. I'm just going to come back to here. The whole system becomes loaded. And when we are wired and worried, when we're living in the place of chronic stress, what happens is we're ready for a fight or to run. And so what happens is we come forward. If you're the lion right now and I'm going to fight you, I come forward ready to fight. It's my fighting posture or it's my running posture. But what happens musculoskeletally, all of these upper respiratory and chest muscles at the front start to tighten. Everything starts to come forward. Look at my head from the side. You see that? Yeah, you can. I'm ready to run. Right? My shoulders become rounded. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to go. I'm arched forward. My lower back, you can't see it right now. My lower back is arched forward. I'm in this fight or flee posture. Now that's great if I'm about to fight a bear or a lion, but it's no good if I'm sitting at my desk all day. It's no good if I'm sitting in traffic all day. It's no good if I'm living like this and I'm arched forward, my head's forward, I'm all tense here, I'm all tense here, my legs and lower back are ready to spring and fight. Everything's wound up and tight. Musculoskeletally alone, which I think is probably the smallest issue that's on this page here, musculoskeletally alone, we're in trouble. We've got chronic back pain. We've got chronic neck pain and headaches and tightness and shortness of breath simply because of the respiratory muscles. I could go on and on. It's a big deal. I see it in practice. I think it's the smallest of the challenges that come up on this screen here. What other challenges come up? The endocrine system, the whole hormonal system gets out of whack. Thyroid hormones, adrenal hormones, sex hormones, they all get out of whack. Why? Because everything's diverted into our adrenal hormones to be fighting cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. We need them right now. Metabolic challenges happen. Why? Well, we've now triggered glucose production and glucose letdown. So the body becomes awash with sugar because we need the energy to fight or flee. But that's only supposed to last a minute or two. But now we've got this blood sugar regulation out the window. You know what that means? That's a diabetic kind of picture. These are the outcomes of living in this place. Mental health challenges. If you're living with poor concentration, high alertness, and emotionally suppressed because everything needs to survive right now, what happens in this mental health state? You know, we're kind of coming out the back of a pandemic, this viral global pandemic. You know it, I know it, we've lived it. But I think what we're seeing now stacked on top of that is this mental health pandemic. Why? Because we had to survive so deeply. We were separated from other people, which is a whole different story. And fear was driven. We were highly vigilant for a time. We came into this state without good resources initially, that we then got locked up for a couple of years at whatever level in your country, in your town. That's irrelevant. But we've depleted whatever resources we had left. And so our emotions got skewed, our connections got skewed. Now mentally, we're sitting in this place and the statistics are scary with the increase in mental health challenges. It's related into this place in part as a mental stress challenge and as a chronic stress challenge. Of course, chronic stress leads to poor performance. Why? Because we've gone up and over the scale. We're now in the downslide, and so our academic performance goes down. Our work performance goes down. Concentration's gone. Our relational performance goes down. All of these things, these places, all start to get suppressed. Why? Because we're wired and worried, and we're just trying to survive. Let's look at these last two as well. Social challenges, relational challenges. Why? You've been there. You know what it's like when we're trying to survive. It becomes all about us. Not in a selfish kind of way. I guess it does eventually, but we've got to look after ourselves because there's threats out there. And so now we start to become socially disconnected because others could be that threat that we're wired about. Relationally, we start to lose connection because we're worried about ourselves, even unconsciously worried. Let's let that land. It's not that we're walking around all of the time. Some people are. But we're often walking around feeling this unconscious level of concern. When we're trying to relate to our spouse or our significant other or our kids or our work colleagues or whatever, relationally, we're not as present as we could be. Chronic stress leads to these chronic challenges. If all we try and do is get rid of the chronic challenges and never deal with the chronic stress, we just loop around, like the picture I showed you earlier. What's actually going on here? Let's have a look. It'll be familiar for you now. Remember the strategy? It was taught, it was modeled, it's valued, it's praised. The strategy is be busy, hustle, drive, push, exert. The question is, where's the recovery in our world? Where's the recovery in our communities? Where's the recovery modeled? Where's the the rest modeled? Where's the rest praised? Where's the rest valued? It's not. Unfortunately, it's getting there. There are people who are starting to cotton on to the fact that the speed that we are going at is not a sustainable thing. That's the whole thing I'm talking about. It's not a sustainable way to be. What else is going on here? Remember the challenge? What was the challenge? The challenge is the cost is high, the pain is high. We're doing it for a promise of a payoff, but we don't know any other way. And we're sitting in this place where we ask the question, surely it'll change, won't it? Surely it'll change. But the results that so many people are sitting in is overwhelm, worry, uncertainty. And so here, what we're starting to try and do as a culture is we're now in a culture that tries to hack the system. We're living in this busy place. We're living in this exhausted, worried, wired place. We're pushing ourselves, and now we go, it's not working. Let's hack it. Let's try and hack the system. The problem I feel with hacking, we have all these biohacks, and look, let me be real. Some of them are brilliant, some of them are overwhelming, some of them are science-based, some of them are not. If you love to hack things, all power to you, that's fine. But what I feel, what I see, is that we get only a small increase in recovery with the hacks, but we get an increase in load and pressure. There's now so many things to do. I've got to do this, I've got to do that. If I just do this, it'll help me here, and then I've got to do that, and I've got to add this to my day and another thing. And now we've put more on our plate to have to deal with. And so trying to hack it, I don't think is the best strategy. I certainly think things like heart rate variability, it's not a hack, it's a measure. But there's other things, cold showers, saunas. I don't think they're hacks, they just improve our physiology. But there are some things I think are hacks. And so keep your wits about you. Ask yourself, is this actually creating more recovery and more rest for my system, or is it adding more load and more pressure? Life beyond the point of threshold. I want you to land with me in the fact that change is possible, because all of what we're talking about so far seems like problem and challenge. I'm hoping that for you, it's letting light bulbs go off. There's little flashes going, I didn't see it. I didn't realize I didn't make that connection. I wasn't aware. And so understanding's going up, awareness is going up. And on the back of that, we're going to build in strategy. But I want to wind out this whole picture as to how do you know, aside from heart rate variability, which is brilliant, how do you know what life looks like beyond the threshold? Well, firstly, use the available data. There's now EEG scans that you can do, and there's heart rate variability you can do, and you can measure sleep, and you can do all of these things. Use the data that's there to see, am I beyond threshold? But even in the absence of data, the body will let you know. Your body will let you know, and it looks like this. There's this cascade of events that happens. Where is it? Here it is. This cascade of events that happens when we're beyond our threshold. And at first, we have this raised voice. Then we have this yelling, then this shouting, then this screaming. And eventually, we run the risk of being taken out. What this looks like is this. Imagine a little Johnny. Little Johnny is out and he's playing. He's 4 years old. He's running around and he's playing. They're near a busy road. There's a little bit of concern, but Johnny's just there. He's having fun and he's playing. And then he starts to run near the road, and Dad steps in and says, Johnny, come back away from the road. Raised voice. Okay. Come back away from the road. Scary. Dad can see the trucks. Dad can see the traffic. Johnny's having fun. He doesn't know. He doesn't see the consequence, but Dad can see. Raised voice. If Johnny keeps running towards the road, or he's playing on the side of the road, now Dad's yelling, Johnny, come on, get back away from the road. We've gone past raised voice and we're now yelling. If Johnny keeps going, he's just not listening, he's just oblivious to it all, he keeps pushing, now Dad's shouting, Johnny, get away from the road. And eventually, Johnny, get away from the road. He's now screaming at Johnny. Why? Because he can see that Johnny's threatened. He can see the risks there. He can see what's happening if he doesn't change his trajectory. If he doesn't change what he's doing, Johnny is in trouble. Johnny's whole survival could be threatened if he doesn't heed Dad's thing. And Dad is yelling now. Dad is shouting now. Dad is screaming at the top of his lungs saying, Johnny, get away from the road. It's dangerous. What's the next thing? If Johnny doesn't listen, Dad's only choice is to run and crash tackle Johnny to the ground. What does he risk doing there? He takes Johnny out. He risks breaking a bone or cuts and scratches or hurting his son. But he realizes the only thing that he can do in that moment to keep Johnny safe is to take him out. Why? The broken bone, the cuts and scratches, they are nothing in comparison to what would happen if he didn't get taken out. And here's the story. This is what our body does to us. Our unconscious starts to say to us, Jonathan, me now, you need to change something. It raises its voice. It gets my awareness. You need to change something. If I don't listen to that, if I don't listen to say, my body is telling me I need to rest. I'm tired a lot. I'm distracted a lot. My body's telling me stop and rest. If I don't listen, it starts yelling at me. If I don't listen, it starts shouting at me. It starts saying, you have to have a break. And now I'm starting to feel exhausted all the time. It doesn't seem to matter how much sleep I get. I'm just tired all the time. My weekends I'm exhausted. I don't want to see friends. I don't want to do this. My body's starting to shout at me, you have to have a break. But still I'll push on because people expect me to turn up and do my best. And I really must because I've got an X, Y, and Z. Now my body's screaming at me, and now I'm feeling my heart rate. I've got high blood pressure. I'm sick all the time. I've got this. I've got that. All of these things are starting to happen. It feels like I'm getting old. It feels like things are breaking down. This is my body screaming at me, saying you have to change something. And if I don't listen, eventually, just like Dad had to take little Johnny out, my body's going to say, hey, I've got to take you out. I've got to take you out. I've got to take you into the place where, I'm sorry, you're going to crash right now. You could be down for a while. This could really hurt. But it's better than the alternative because the alternative is survival is compromised significantly. Let's put it into context for you. This picture here's our Yerkes-Dodson scale. Okay, it's the same picture is up on the right-hand corner there, but now I've broken it down and we're talking about life beyond the threshold. Initially, the body tells us through this illness pattern, it says, oh, you're in trouble in this early part of the beyond the threshold. This is the raised voice, yelling, shouting, screaming. The red zone, this is exhaustion. The nervous system is now exhausted. We've got the sympathetic, parasympathetic dysregulation. We've talked about it already. And now the whole system is exhausted and it can no longer keep the balance of things. All of the other systems of the body start to break down because they don't have the resources to continue to move forwards. Immune system breaks down, cardiovascular system breaks down, hormone endocrine system breaks down, all of the digestive, the reproductive systems, they all start to, they're coming down because they can't sustain life in this place. What does that look like? Well, these things here are just a selection, not exhaustive at all, but let me be really, really real. But things like chronic fatigue, the body says, I can't do it anymore. I'm taking you out. I need to rest. Fibromyalgia, I need you to stop. Everything hurts. Everything's overwhelming. Just stop. What I'm not saying here, let's get this really clear. I'm not saying these things are not real. They are very, very real, but they happen when the system's exhausted. What else? Autoimmune conditions. What else? Major mental health challenges. Why? The system has run out of resource and can't continue to live beyond the threshold. The great news is change is possible. The great news is understanding this. This is the journey you've been on with me so far. You've understood this. You've seen this. We're now going to go in to looking at this. We've done this story, right? These goals and dreams, the strategy that's probably not worked for most people, the challenges that's very real for most people, the results that are tangible where I'm overwhelmed and worried, wired and worried kind of thing. But that's happened. It's happening. Everywhere around you, unfortunately, it's happening. You are in a place where you are looking to do something about it. Oh, how I wish more people were willing to do something about it. But all that matters right now is that you're here doing something about it. Which means as you start to move into changes possible, the things that are going to mean the most, the things that are going to be the biggest shift, is a new strategy, finding internal stability and redefining your story to move into places where things come alive. In the very next video, we're going to talk about how do you do all of this? What are the new strategies that get you unstuck, that get you moving forwards into a place where you're actually getting real change, real breakthrough, real momentum? It's all about not worrying so much about these things. You've understood it now. But it's about saying, okay, what are we going to do? How do I make a shift? How do I make a change? You may be up at this point and you're feeling overwhelmed simply by what I've shared so far. And if that's the case, give yourself a break and find the hope in the story. Find the truth in the story that it's not too late. It's not too hard. You're not too old. It is possible. I've worked with people right across the age spectrum and right across the taken out spectrum. If you can remember that exhausted picture and the story of Johnny, I've worked right across there. And the key is constant, small steps in the right direction. Take a break. Go and grab a glass of water, a cup of tea. Don't just push straight into the next video. Stop and reflect. Stop and think. Stop and contemplate. Where are you? Have you been taken out? Are you in the exhausted stage or the illness stage? Or are you still on the good side of the threshold and your heart rate variability is telling that and you're here to maximize all you've got? That's absolutely possible. And I know that for some people, that's going to be where you're at. And if so, well done. That's the best place to be. But I suspect this yellowy orange place, this red place, is probably more common for most people. Change is possible. Go and grab a glass of water. Go and sit and reflect for a little while. And on the next video, we're going to start to move through what are the strategies? How do we move? What does it look like? What are the clues that exist for you to be able to move forwards? I'll see you there.